Alright guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In this week, we are tackling Stanford University. It is the dream university for so many students, whether you are in the US or an international student, just to be in California, be around that startup culture, whether you're trying to, study business, international relations, science, computer engineering, whatever degree it may be, Stanford is probably a dream for almost every single student, and for some pretty good reasons. It is home in the Silicon Valley, where it's great financial stability. People literally want to go there to work in that entire startup culture and be around some of the most innovative and cutting edge technologies in their field. So in this video, we are going to look at the undergraduate as well as the graduate applications for Stanford University. And just taking a look at the ranking itself, Stanford has actually moved up to number 2 in the world. It crossed MIT this year to become the second most popular and the best university as reported by the US World Ranking. Now, in general, if you look at the acceptance rate, Stanford is accepting around 3 to 4%, which is one of the lowest that I've ever seen. I know a few years ago, Stanford was up in maybe the 8 to 9% acceptance rate, but this year, 3 to 4, that is an all-time low. So more students are applying. It's getting really competitive to get in. And talking about their diverse international student population, it is home to about 16% of its overall population being international students. So they are very proud to admit international students from various countries. And this is a great destination to learn from some of the best minds in the world. So talking about the undergraduate applications, we are looking at applying through the Common App portal. Now, Stanford is no different than the other colleges. You will find Stanford in the college drop-down list of Common App, and it will cost you $90, which is a little bit on the higher side as the application fee to apply to Stanford. Now let's look at the requirements. So typically they ask for the school report, mid-year report, and final report, which are all required documents. But as a student, this is not something that you have to submit. All of these documents are taken care of by your school counselor. The final year report is something that the school counselor will only upload if you get admitted and after you finish the final exams next year. This isn't something that you need right now because I know it's a common question that students that are currently in grade 12 ask. Next, you have the counselor as well as this recommendation letters. So this includes the counselor recommendation that talks about the student's character, personality, and just traits overall as, being a responsible citizen towards society. And then you have 2 teacher evaluations, which are more like teacher recommendation letters that talk about your capability and aptitudes towards specific subjects. Now, my recommendation towards this would be that if you're applying for a specific degree, maybe one of the teacher recommendations can be towards that, and then the second recommendation can be something else. So let's say, for example, you're applying for computer science. You can have a computer science teacher write a recommendation, and then maybe a math or a physics teacher. So something along those lines, that's like a sweet spot to hit. There are 1 optional evaluations that you can submit. Again, it's optional, so it's up to you. If you have a coach, a mentor, or a tuition teacher, they can submit an evaluation for you. And the standardized testing policy is test optional for Stanford. It was never, mandatory to begin with, and that continues to remain. So since Stanford is test optional, what exactly do they look for in a student profile when they are looking at offering an admission letter to students? Basically, if we look at the common data set, which is a report that Stanford publishes each year for its previous year, we can see that academically, your school GPA, your essays, your recommendations, all are very, very important. And non-academically, they look at your extracurricular abilities, your ability and talent, and personality traits. So overall, the ability for you to write your essays, how well you explain and portray your activities, your extracurricular activities, as well as how well your academic intellectual skills are. So school grades, if you've written standardized tests, how well you've done in that. If you've written AP exams, how well you've done in that. All of this is what Stanford looks for in an ideal candidate. Now, if you are someone who is considering writing the SAT, even though it's test optional, you can see in this slide that this is usually where the students kind of land. Roughly, in my opinion, it's always a good idea to stay above 1500 for the SAT. That is considered to be in a good spot, but feel free to pause this slide to kind of take a look at these numbers. Next up, we look at the school GPA. We can clearly see that I would say more than 85% of the students had a GPA of above 3.75. So looking at academics, Stanford does keep that at high priority. If you're someone, who has received like an 80 or a 70% in high school, it may be a good idea to show your academic ability somewhere else, like a standardized test score or the AP exam. So with all of this, you are looking at two deadlines that Stanford has. There is a restrictive early action deadline for November 1st, and there is a regular decision deadline for January 5th. Now, there are transfer deadlines for March 15th each year, where even international students first and second year can apply to transfer to Stanford. Now, I know that a lot of students kind of have a doubt on what these deadlines mean, so I've written like advantages and disadvantages on this slide here to show you guys that. Now, coming to the part that, that all of the students dread, the supplemental essays. Stanford University has some of the most number of supplemental essays that they ask. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are like the 5 that you have to have. My number one tip is, if there is a supplemental essay that's optional, fill that out. If you really want to get into Stanford, show Stanford that you are willing to take these additional steps to stand out. Now, what is the most significant challenge that society faces today? How did you spend the last 2 summers? Historical moments? One of your extracurricular activities, and 5 things about you. All of these hints are kind of like jotted down on this table here, so you guys can go through that. But other than these 5 essays, you are also looking at writing 1 personal essay that's going to be your Common App essay that goes along with your application. And if you guys thought that that's it, nope, we have 3 more essays that are even longer and lengthier. So that's a total of like 8 essays. Now, the one that kind of stands out to me the most is write a letter to your future roommate that reveals something about yourself. Now, obviously, when you are, thinking about your future roommate, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is you do not want to be stinking up your dorm room or, wherever you're going around campus. So you always need to carry around your Dosage Perfume. Now, Dosage Perfumes are luxury, affordable fragrances that you can get. They are literally like the replica of Tom Ford perfumes, but at a smaller and more affordable rate. You can check them out on the website and use the coupon code in the description below for a discount. So with all of this rigorous application requirements that Stanford has, Stanford isn't cheap to study at. We are looking at roughly $60,000 to $70,000 per year as tuition fee before any financial aid, which is again on the higher side, but the quality of education does kind of like justify this return on investment. Now, with this said, I also want to kind of talk a little bit about the financial aid. Stanford specifically mentions that more than 2/3 of their students do receive aid in some way or another. But with that said, they also say that the request for financial aid by international students will be on like a need-to basis. So they can maybe say yes to you, they can maybe say no to you. There's no guarantee that you'll receive this need-based aid. However, if you want to apply for the need-based aid, you have to fill out the CSS profile. So remember that Stanford is need-aware, which means that if you ask for aid, it will carry an effect on whether they even admit you as a student or not. But if you want aid, make sure you submit your CSS profile along with your Common App Stanford application. However, since they've mentioned that 2/3 of their students do get this aid, if you are one among the fortunate students to actually get this aid in Stanford University, everything will be covered. 4 years of tuition fee, living expenses, food, your maybe flight tickets for an yearly visit to your home country, everything is covered. You may just need to pay $1,000 to $2,000 in expenses here and there, like health insurances and whatnot, but Stanford will cover you 100% if you do get this need-based aid. Now, I know that a lot of students have requested for step-by-step walkthroughs of how to apply to the CSS profile, because this CSS profile is the sole application that determines what and how much amount of aid you will get, not just in Stanford, but any other university that you apply to. So if you guys are interested, the walkthrough is a part of the Ivy League 101 course. It's not just this walkthrough. There is a step-by-step process of how to apply to colleges, building a college list, what you need to do to make sure you stand out, a 10-chapter module on everything you need as an international student applying to the US for undergraduate as well as graduate students. So feel free to check that out. That's going to be in the description below as well. Let's move on to the graduate students. Now, graduate students will apply through the Stanford website portal. Now, there's no common application for grad students, and this is usually how it's always been. You guys are looking at a hefty application fee of $125 with deadlines ranging from November to March of 2024. The reason why the deadlines vary is that each department releases its own application deadline. So depending on what department you're applying for, take a look at those deadlines respectively. Now, with that said, let's look at the documents and requirements. First and foremost thing, Stanford has made it very, very clear that 3-year undergraduate degrees are not accepted. They have specifically given India as an example here when they talk about this. If you've done a 3-year degree, like a BCA degree, for example, you cannot apply to Stanford's graduate program. However, what you can do is with the 3-year degree, if you do maybe like a 2-year master's degree, with those 2 degrees combined, then you can apply for a Stanford graduate program. So remember this. Apart from that, you will need 3 letters of recommendation. GRE is optional. TOEFL is required. There are absolutely no waivers that they mention. And just to give you an example, these are the minimum scores required for different programs. There are 2 pieces of like writing supplements, the statement of purpose that the graduate school asks for. So you guys can go through these, and my suggestion would be to start preparing as early as possible. There is an optional writing supplement. Feel free to go through that. And like I said, make sure you work on these and submit these to show that you're willing to stand out as well. Graduate students are looking at a tuition fee of roughly $62,000, which can kind of be offsetted with a variety of graduate scholarships and fellowships ranging from research assistant positions, teaching assistantships, as well as stipends for PhD students. Now, it's important to note that there is a Knight-Hennessy scholarship, which is given to a certain number of students. There is a deadline of October 11th to apply for this, and there is a separate application. The Knight-Hennessy scholarship is one of the most competitive scholarships for graduate students that covers up to 3 years of full funding. So again, if you get this scholarship, Stanford will cover everything. Since it has a separate application, make sure you guys spend time and work on that with sufficient effort. So that's all that I had for this video. And you guys didn't think that I forgot our random question of the day, right? So in today's video, the question is, drop it down in the comments below, when is your birthday? Because today is mine, probably when you're watching this video. So drop yours in the comment below. Smash the like button if you're watching till this point. Subscribe to the channel because we have so many more videos that are coming up, all the way from Ivy Leagues to high acceptance to best return on investment for the rest of this year. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.